Wow, I have finally saw an original Star Wars movie in the theater. For a few days, the theaters showed Return of the Jedi to celebrate its 40th anniversary. And yeah, I feel like a traitor to all you part of the Lucas fam, because some of the money does go to Disney, and yes, I am ashamed, but man, was that an experience. For the first time in my life, I got to experience a good Star Wars movie. I wasn't old enough to remember being in the theaters for the prequels, so the only time I've ever seen a Star Wars movie on the big screen was Jar Jar Abrams' Best Picture winning masterpieces. And I know those are part of their own elite category, but nothing compares to the trilogy that started it all, that changed the landscape of the film industry. Yeah, this wasn't the theatrical cut, which I've never seen. It's Lucas's weird special effects fetish cut. But nonetheless, it's still awesome. Yeah, we could have done less with the bad CGI creatures, because when you have a bad CGI alien beside another alien in prosthetics, the one in makeup is always going to look better because it's real. However, there are parts where I think it did add, like at the end when they save the galaxy from the Empire. It shows cuts from different cities of other planets celebrating, which wasn't in the original cut. And I always believe that is very important to show because it gives the audience a broader scope of what they did affected everyone. Too many movies and TV shows show the reaction of only the main cast instead of showing other parts, and makes it feel small, and it only affected the group that we followed. Now to move on to the audio. Wow, the audio of this movie takes you into a different world. Besides the iconic music sucking you into the world of Star Wars, the sound effects were dialed in. Space battles, even though it did look a little outdated, but for an 80s movie, it still lives up and looks incredible in certain parts. Hearing the blasters from the ship and the noises of maneuvers, it made it such an immersive experience, like a Nolan's Dunkirk dogfight, but in space. Another scene that stood out was the speed racing scene, when they faced off against Dom Toretto and he destroys everyone with a backflip across 2 X-Wings and breaks Solo's back in the name of family. You know what? That's probably going to be in the new Fast X. But yeah, the speed racing scene. That was intense. Probably the worst looking scene in the movie, but the sound effects and also them cutting to the POV of the extraordinary speeds made me hold my breath. Mainly because I tried to rip a nasty one, taking advantage of the loud action scene. But that scene was one of the best scenes. The sounds were crazy, and it really showed that you needed to watch this in theaters because the surround sound was incredible. Even when it came down to the final fight between Luke and Vader, the quietness in the room, and all you hear is the sound of the lightsabers clashing, gave a different kind of intensity because you could see and feel the focus between them two. Like 2 samurais dueling. And how they managed to show the duel, the battle in Endor, and the battle in space going on at the same time takes an insane level of thought, because that third act could have been such a mess and made you confused and lost and what's happening when, how long has this fight been going, surely the battle would have been over by now. So the editing was done perfectly. And the bread and butter to me, which I think made Star Wars, was the dynamic trio of Han, Luke, and Leia. Every single one of those characters worked off one another. They all had their own personality, and all 3 of them grew as characters. As you can see, they changed. Luke is more stoic and calm and concentrated, but still talks to his friends as if they're his friends. Leia has taken more of a leadership role and growing into the woman she needs to be. Han is more or less reckless, but even braver than before, and more emotional now because he's in love with Leia. What good writers do, and also actors, is show how the characters interact with one another. This time I paid close attention to see how the characters interact with one another, and it proved my point on why these characters are the reason Star Wars is what it is today. Besides taking the hard task and writing your character as more developed, which means the way they speak and their actions different from the first movie. For example, the way Han Solo talks to Luke is different how he talks to Leia, which is also different how he talks to Lando. That's the organic chemistry that makes a good film. Look at any good movie or TV and all the characters have this flow because it's natural. Movies now don't do that, which is why you have these one-note characters with no personality because they interact with one another the exact same way. Think about yourself. How you talk to your mom is different. How you talk to your dad, your siblings, your friends, your teachers, your cousins, etc. Another scene I want to mention is when Luke confesses to Leia that they're related. He doesn't just bluntly say it right off the bat like what most movies do now. He puts Leia and the audience in a roller coaster. He was trying to say it without saying it. And they could have just been blunt with it. It would have suited Luke's character if they did that, but it would have made the scene a lot more boring. But how Luke articulated it in a poetry type style, plus with Carrie Fisher's performance of her trying to figure out what he's trying to say, made the scene a lot more dynamic than it needed to be. And after when Luke leaves and Han comes into the picture, her reaction afterwards is priceless. Once Luke leaves, the initial reaction shock has dissipated and the emotion starts building up, which brings Han in and develops his character. Initially, when he asks Leia what's up and she doesn't tell him, he's like, forget about it, and then leaves, but then he stops himself and he goes back to her and gives her a hug. That is not the same Han from the first movie. That is the Han who is more developed, who's more mature, and is also in love. A New Hope Han would have just left. That scene also builds an internal tension between himself and Leia because he sees her alone in an intimate setting with Luke. So now he's questioning if the woman he loves is in love with another man. So in the end, when we get the emotional payoff when he confronts her and asks her, is she in love with Luke? She tells him, no, Luke's her brother. Then Han gets this big smile on his face. And then he makes a confused look because he's trying to put the math together. Harrison Ford is a brilliant actor. The weakest part of this movie were the Ewoks. Yeah, they are cute, but it kind of took the drama and the believability out of the movie. Especially when these little teddy bears were destroying the Empire's ass. Oh, but there's this one little scene during the battle that Star Wars and other good movies are really good at it. Is when they show these two Ewoks. A bomb goes off, two of them go flying, and one gets up and the other one is laying still. And the reaction from that one Ewok when he realizes that the other one's dead and starts crying, man, was that emotional. We didn't even get to meet these Ewoks, and what that very short scene established was the fight does have consequences to not just the Empire, but to the good guys as well. And also that these two Ewoks were probably friends, related, or because the reaction of that one Ewok realizing his friend is dead right beside him, it was so heartbreaking. A very emotional and dark scene for a Star Wars movie. I am very curious though what this movie could have looked like if they went with the original plan, where the Ewoks were supposed to be Wookiees, but they didn't do it because the budget would have been way too high. And let's be honest, Ewoks were much easier to merchandise. I mean, I don't blame them, just look at them. Hey yo, what's up? One last thing before I wrap this up, I want to show you this shot. Look how beautiful this looks. And what this establishes right from the beginning is what the Empire is from the start. This terrifying structure of a military force. And then the shot when the camera's following Vader and the Emperor passing by through the stormtroopers. Oh my god, the cinematography is so good. What the OG trilogy did very well was the transformation of Luke from an inexperienced young man who worked on a farm to becoming a goddamn Jedi. I think the prequels did so bad with Anakin. His turn to the dark side was in 5 minutes. And Rey Palpatine didn't need a trilogy because she's just that good, okay? 5 sets, 15 reps of Kegels every day goes a very long way. And the turnaround of Darth Vader becoming Anakin again. The Emperor testing Luke, manipulating him, trying to push him to the edge, get him to the dark side. And when it came down for Luke to strike down his own father, he didn't give in to the dark side. He said no.
Never.
And that's when Luke became a Jedi. In that very moment. And when Vader was watching his son on the brink of death by his master maniacally enjoying electrocuting Luke, you could see the internal conflict in Vader as he's looking at his master, and then Luke, and the master, and then Luke, and then hilariously going, no! Why did they add that in there? I know in the original theatrical cut it was just completely silent, which is way better than him going, no! Oh man, you gotta love George Lucas. One last scene I want to bring up is when Darth Vader dies. So much intention and detail in that scene felt very raw from the emotional dialogue of Anakin telling his son he wants to see him with his own eyes, and then Luke takes his helmet off. And when he dies, the Imperial music plays on a one-note key. Shut up, okay? I'm not a musician. It just sounded really good, okay? Just wow. What an experience. Never in my life I thought I'd be able to experience Return of the Jedi in theaters. My childhood movie, the trilogy that defined a whole generation, inspired a whole wave of creators, the trilogy that changed the game in the movie industry. I didn't cry, guys, okay? I didn't cry, goddammit. It was just really good. I'm definitely giving this movie the Rock Hard Award. It made me so happy, man. Yeah, I could go on and on about this movie, but I think I'm just gonna end it here. Man, they don't make movies like this anymore. This is what movies were. Anyways, man, until my next one, ta ta.